Hi, as AJ said, I am the fairly new vice president at EcoSense. Just to give you a quick background on me, back in about 1990, my business partner and I started a radon monitor manufacturing and leasing company called Rattlink, which is still in business. My partner and I had a divorce back around 2000, into 2007, and I went my way, and he retained the company, and I did a few other things for a while, including some training. And then in 2017, in January of that year, I became the executive director of AARST and NRPP, and I retired from that just at the end of July, in the end of June this year. And so in July, I should say last year, it is 2023. In July, I came on board with EcoSense, and there's a reason for that. I had been looking at their detector technology since I first saw it, and realized, wow, this company has put together a very very, very good radon sensor in their monitor production. And I'm so impressed by it. I talked to them several times to get more information, and then I was invited to come on board with them. So that's why I'm here. Their detector technology is not only the best available, particularly unless you're willing to spend about $7,000 for a monitor. It's also very, very affordable, and less expensive than some units that are very well known out there in the radon testing business that don't perform nearly as well. So that's a little bit about me. I see we have almost 24 people, I think, that have joined. So I thank you for taking the time to join me. So I'm going to go ahead and get started here and share my screen. So what we're going to be talking about today are some surefire ways to sell more radon tests. And as I said, I've been at this a long time, and home inspection, the home inspection industry does more radon testing than any single group, because it's an ancillary service for a whole lot of home inspectors across the country. And that's a function of the fact that back around 1992, the EPA decided they wanted to encourage people to do radon testing, and came out with protocols for testing within the time constraints of a real estate transaction. So that's true in the United States. A lot of what I'm going to be talking about are ways you would do that there. But I did notice we had a fellow who said hello from Alberta, Canada, and so I don't want to leave you out. As I go through this, I'll mention some things that perhaps will be helpful to you in your market. Even though the protocols and recommendations from Health Canada are a little different than they are in the United States from the Environmental Protection Agency. So the first one on the list of these 6 ways that you can sell more radon tests is to don't wait for them to ask. And I bring this one up because I was at the InterNACHI conference this past year, late in the year, out in California. Maybe some of you were there, and I was hearing home inspectors tell me that they just don't get many calls for radon in their area, and I've heard that for years, and I wanted to address it. And it really comes down to this: if you wait for them to ask, you're probably not going to get many calls, particularly in a lot of the markets that you may serve. And the reason is simple. People know to get a home inspection because their real estate agent tells them that that's a good idea, unless, except for perhaps in some cases. But they don't really know about ancillary services, and they don't really understand radon, and they've got a lot going on when they're purchasing a house. And if someone doesn't bring it up to them, then they're not going to think to ask for it. So the other part of that is, even if you ask them, hey, would you like me to do a radon test? as part of my home inspection. Most people are ignorant enough about the radon health risk that they're probably just going to decline, figuring you're trying to just make an extra buck, and they don't really understand it. And people are not willing sometimes to be straightforward and say, hey, I don't really understand why I should have one. Why don't you take a minute and tell me? So my advice to you, for what it's worth, is to treat a radon test as a natural thing that's always going to occur as part of a home inspection. And so make your question, instead of would you like a radon test, ask them if they have scheduled someone else to do their radon test, or if they've got somebody else to do the test for them. So as you see here in this slide, am I doing your radon test, or have you arranged that with a testing firm? If they kind of step back and say, well, no, I don't have somebody else to do that, then just be upfront with them and tell them that, of course, you need a radon test. And the reason is that EPA and State Health Department recommend all home buyers test for radon because it is a Group A carcinogen, which means it's a proven carcinogen, a proven health risk to human beings, not just animals. And it's the #1 cause of lung cancer in people who don't smoke. And then just move right into the fact that you can do it along with your home inspection for an additional however much you want to charge, and save them from having to hire somebody else to do the test. Now, I have experience from this from back in the 90s, when I actually used to do some radon testing. I have experience with this with customers even back in the day I had my other businesses. And they found that this does work as long as you are consistent with your approach. But the other part to this is you probably have people, or you will if you're just getting started and you're growing, that answer the phones for you and talk to clients as they call into the office and say, they'd like to hire you to do home inspections. So take the time to train your customer support staff, those people who answer the phone, to make the same pitch. So are we doing your radon test, or have you scheduled that with a radon testing firm? And that may take them off guard. And again, you need to train your staff to say, well, absolutely, you need to have this done for the same reasons, and make the same pitch. We can do it as part of the home inspection and save you from having to call someone else. The second thing that I see, and I took some time and looked through a lot of home inspector websites as I prepared for this webinar, and to see what they have on their websites about radon as an ancillary. And what I found is a lot of home inspectors refer to the EPA zone map, and maybe even have a link or a picture to it. And they use that as a way to make a case that, there's a lot of radon in this state. And then if they're in a state where maybe the zone map doesn't look like it's very promising for finding high radon, then maybe they don't pursue it as much, or they're bashful to bring it up, or whatnot. Just to fill you in on that EPA zone map, it was really created based on the 1988 Indoor Radon Act that Congress passed, that included a mandate for EPA to put together a map to help prioritize where their efforts to promote radon testing as a important issue, and the health risk associated with radon, sort of where to begin to sort of prioritize the focus. And at the time, they only had about 5,700 radon tests performed across the entire United States. So if you spread that across 50 states, they didn't have many tests per state to make any real strong decisions on how great the risk of finding radon was based on radon tests alone. So what they did is they created a an algorithm that included a lot of other factors like the geology in the state, types of soil types, types of rocks in particular areas of a state. They used aerial maps where the military had flown over and taken radiation measurements, coming from the ground as they flew over. And they also looked at different foundation types that they typically see in one state versus another, or one part of a state versus another part of the state. And that's really how they identified, the EPA zones. And if you aren't familiar with that map, it looks here, and you can probably find it real easily if you just Google the EPA map. There's some verbiage at the bottom of the map, and it was always there, but unfortunately it doesn't get read because it's in really tiny print. And it basically says that the map should not be used to determine if a home in a given zone should be tested. And the reason is homes with elevated radon have been found in all three zones: zone 1, zone 2, zone 3, and all homes should be tested for radon. So I hear home inspectors all the time who live in, some of those yellow areas that say, well, we just don't have any radon there. Well, just consider the fact that if people believe that, then they don't test. And as long as people don't test, then there's no radon, right? We just don't know about it. So I would encourage you not to use this map. It's outdated. We have better resources now, and you can access them for free. So I'm going to tell you about that. If you go to the AARST website, you can find a link to the AARST state radon report cards. Now, this database is quite large. A lot of tests conducted all across the country. It's not as large as we would like it to be, because it still doesn't have a lot of data for tests performed by home inspectors using continuous monitors. There just hasn't been a good structure to get that data into a single database, with the exception of a few state radon programs where they require reporting to the state. And the problem with that is even some of those states don't want to share that data, perhaps with the database that I'm referring to here. And that database is kept by the Center for Disease Control. And so they've collected some 3.5 million radon tests across the country. And so after they put this into a database, unfortunately, they didn't put it into a map that is very easy for consumers to just look at and quickly determine, what's going on in their state. It's the map on the CDC site is more for researchers, and you have to go put in certain parameters, and you can look at things different ways and find different information depending on how you set the metrics. And so what the AARST organization did while I was there as executive director was put together these report cards. And so, for example, I'm going to show you this slide. This is the AARST state report card for the state of Georgia. If you looked back at the EPA map, I'll switch back here for just a second. You can see that, there's a little bit of zone 1. There are about four counties, a little bit of zone 2, and a lot of zone 3. But if you look at the report card, you can see that here in the state of Georgia, that there have been, let's see if I can find the number here. Looking at the number of tests, you can see here that 25% of the tests that have been performed in Georgia showed a concentration of 4 picocuries per liter or higher. So it also tells you that another 31%, fell between 2 and 4. So you can get some information here. You can click through it. If you're going to put a link on your website, then I would strongly recommend that you go to the AARST site, find your state report card, or if you service multiple states, then grab them both and put those on your website as helpful information. And you can always have your staff refer to them and that sort of thing in the event that they're just not convinced to take EPA's recommendation that all home buyers should test no matter where they live, because elevated radon has been found in all 3 zones in every state. So there are some other things you can put on your website that aren't typically promoted. As I was looking through, I mean, people are really good at, EPA estimates 21,000 Americans die of radon-induced lung cancer every year. And they do typically put in, it's the leading cause of lung cancer in people who don't smoke, or the second leading cause of lung cancer. But there's some other facts here that perhaps you can put on your information page about radon that would be helpful. And if you get familiar enough that you can talk about them when you're engaging with clients, then that could be a benefit as well. So first of all, don't forget that radon is not only occurring in homes with basements. The whole radon issue began in Pennsylvania when a worker at the Limerick nuclear power plant set off the alarms going into work. And they were trying to figure out why that was happening, and they discovered incredibly high radon concentrations in the home where he lived. And the radon decay products that are produced as the gas atoms decay were so heavy in the air that his clothing would catch them, and as he went into work, that the radiation from those radon decay products were setting off the alarms. And if you're familiar with Pennsylvania, then probably the great majority of housing in that state has basements. So people began to look at radon as something that you'll find in homes with basements. So yes, there's a myth out there that, well, my home doesn't have a basement, or the home I'm buying doesn't have a basement, so I don't need to worry about it. Well, elevated radon, just FYI, can be found in homes that are built slab on grade, homes built over crawl spaces, combination foundation types. So it's good to have that information on your site. It also, people think, well, my house is drafty and old, so it's getting a lot of ventilation, so I'm not going to have radon. Drafty houses can have elevated radon. Back when the issue was first really discovered as a problem in homes in the late 80s, most houses were kind of drafty. And also, if you make them very well insulated, they're typically going to be more airtight in the process. Sometimes that can help prevent radon entry, but oftentimes that may help radon come in more readily, because the pressure difference between the house and the soil can draw radon in because of that pressure difference as you make the house tighter. So I would encourage you to perhaps put something, a statement like that on your site. Another fact that doesn't often get promoted, but regular exposure to 4 picocuries per liter of radon, which is the EPA action level, is comparable in risk to smoking 8 cigarettes a day or getting 200 chest x-rays per year. A lot of people read that and kind of go, I don't want my kids, even if they're not thinking about themselves, to be exposed to that. Yeah, I'll pay you to do a radon test. And then the other part of that is the lung cancer risk increases 16% for every 3 picocurie per liter increase in your long-term average concentration. So if you move from 4 picocuries per liter in one home, and then you go to another home and the average concentration is 7, then the risk is 16% higher for those folks. And it continues to go up 16% for every, for that every 3 picocurie per liter increase. So again, cancer, it has a lot of factors involved with it. So it's not to say, just like smoking, we have plenty of data on smoking causes lung cancer. We have plenty of data that radon exposure causes lung cancer, but you never know who's going to get it. And unfortunately, one of the problems with radon is people don't know what caused their lung cancer. There are thousands of people who end up with lung cancer who never smoked, and they're asking, why did that happen? So part of your job also is to be able to spread that message to your clients and help them be cautious as they move into a new home. So before I move a little further, I'll just mention the Canadian situation. In Canada, they typically don't recommend anyone mitigate the house until they've got 90 days worth of testing. So we at EcoSense do have some products that are very helpful for home monitoring, electronic, that give you professional quality hourly readings, and they're very affordable. And we have a program where you could actually profit from selling those to your clients, make a commission, and give them a little discount in the process. So I'll mention that again as we get toward the end, but that may be an approach for if you're an inspector in Canada, where perhaps selling a short-term test during the inspection is not as simple as it is here in the US. A couple other factors here that you can put on your website. According to the CDC, the risk to children exposed to radon may be almost twice as high as the risk to adults exposed to the same amount of radon. And indoor radon levels do fluctuate throughout the day and night, and from month to month, and from week to week, from month to month, week to week. And it's really good to get continuous monitoring for a longer period of time, even if you are restricted to a 2 or 3 day test for a real estate transaction. Another opportunity to perhaps sell your client a long-term monitor after you explain to them, hey, here are your results. We did everything according to the protocol, took all the proper precautions to get you a good test, but we were limited by being able to test for only a 2 or 3 day window because of need to close the sale, right? So keep that in mind. The next thing I want to mention, and I'll try to speed up here at least as I go through my slides to make sure I don't keep you too late, is a radon warning statement that you could put in your inspection agreements. And basically, this would just be something you put in your basic contract, your agreement that they go through and sign. And it would say something like the US EPA, the Center for Disease Control. You could add in your state health department because they all make the same recommendation. Strongly recommend that all home buyers have an indoor radon test performed prior to purchase or taking occupancy, and recommend mitigation if the levels are above or at or above 4 picocuries per liter. And there's another portion of that you can see about all homes should be tested for radon regardless of geographic location or foundation type, and gives a little explanation why. And then to add a little more persuasion to that statement is you just have them sign off. So you're not pushing it, you're just giving them information, and they would sign off that I choose to have a radon test performed as part of the home inspection for an additional fee or whatever you decide to charge them, or not have a radon test performed and assume all liability and consequences for my decision. And then there's some other information you could choose to put in there or not. For example, properly installed radon control systems will permanently reduce radon concentrations up to 99% because most systems prevent soil air from entering the house. You may also notice other air quality improvements, such as lower humidity, because that damp air from below the slab or from the crawl space can't come in anymore. So you get some added benefit there. Radon control systems will not decrease the appraisal value of the home. In fact, it's commonly accepted as a home improvement. If you have a system that's controlling the radon, that's even better than one that's kind of hovering in, particularly in that 3 to 4 range that can go up at certain times depending on seasons and how you're using your air handler and that sort of thing. So here's why I know this works. Back in I can't remember how many years, it's back in the 2000s, I created a draft for a regulation called the Illinois Radon Awareness Act. And if you're familiar with Gloria Lennertz, who's a very strong advocate for having people test. She was unfortunate enough to lose her husband to lung cancer, and he didn't smoke, and discovered after the fact that they'd been living in high radon for many years. So she took this format to the state legislature and was successful with a group of professionals like yourselves in getting it passed through the Illinois General Assembly. And so the Illinois Radon Awareness Act mandated disclosure of radon risks and during a transaction. And it also was very successful. So it still has the disclosure. You have to sign off on it. All the things that I just described that you put in your inspection agreement are in this document that has to be provided to every home buyer, either by the agent or by the seller if they're selling their own home, by law in the state of Illinois. So this passed in 2008. And if you look on this particular slide, you can see that somewhere around in here in 2008, and we were in a housing slump there because the economy we were in a recession, and we weren't really selling a lot of houses at that time. But if you look at what happened after that with the number of radon tests performed and how it's been going up, it's been going up significantly since 2008. And at least the latest data I have, which is a few years old, indicates that the increase in the number of radon tests during the real estate transaction went from 8% to 55%, just as a result of this notification, this information, and the fact that they had the initial offer. I want it or I don't, and assume all the liability. I encourage you to take a look at that as part of your inspection agreement. This approach also obviously resulted in a lot of mitigation systems being installed. If you look here around 2008, you can see, and this was even during that period where home sales were down because of the economy. And then you look and see that steady growth in mitigations every year. That's because people in Illinois are getting this information on every home sale, and it's producing results. Minnesota is the other state that has passed a similar act. It's pretty much the same. The wording is a little different, but you can see here that mitigation systems also really took a increase here in 2014, and their data shows that it continues to climb. So I encourage you to consider that as a possibility for your inspection agreement. All right, the next thing, as you see on this slide, is if the result that you're giving to your client when you do a radon test is elevated, it's at or above the EPA action level, then be sure you sell them the post-mitigation test. A lot of home inspectors kind of leave this opportunity on the table. And I know that because I interview them regularly and ask them, well, how come you're not going after that? And they get busy and they're working on the other stuff, and then they just don't really think about it. So here's the situation. You all know it. If the test comes back high, the seller's going to have to pay a mitigator to come in and do the mitigation, and there needs to be a test result after the mitigation that indicates that the mitigation was successful. And once that result comes in, then the deal can close, and then the new buyer is going to move in. So it's imperative here that you let your home buyer, the one you're working for, know that if the test results on the test you did perform are elevated, that they need to hire you to come back and do that post-mitigation test. They trusted you to do the pre-mitigation test. They should trust you to do the post-mitigation test. You'll come back and do that for an additional fee of what you deem appropriate. And you tell them the reason is because they can count on you. You're their advocate, not the mitigator that's installing the system or whoever the agent may hire or whatever. You're their advocate. And the other value for you coming back is that you can inspect the mitigation system and determine, visual inspection, like everything else you do, whether it meets the standards. And that is something that is really important based on my experience. I've got here, this buyer needed you. When I was executive director at AARST and NRPP, all of the time we would get complaints from mitigators about mitigators who installed a system, something like this, where they violated the standards and didn't do the job the way it should be. But unfortunately, those complaints came in from the buyer of the home after they had closed, they had moved in, they got through all the excitement and stress of the deal, and they looked around and went, oh yeah, I got a mitigation system. Let me take a look and check this out a little more. And then they go, oh my gosh, this doesn't look right. And they Google this and start to find out, wow, my mitigation system is not up to the standard. So then they file a complaint. So here's an opportunity for you to be, again, your buyer's advocate, to come back and inspect the system. There's something additional you can put in your toolbox, and that is to get certified as a mitigation compliance inspector. This is an NRPP certification where you take a course and actually get a certification for this. And with that, you actually get an app that you can perform a checklist inspection and provide that to your client. It goes into NRPP. You can give a copy to your client. And so you've got an extra credential for doing that valuable inspection. So if you look on the AARST, or actually the NRPP website, National Radon Proficiency Program, you can find all the information about what they call the Soil Gas Mitigation Compliance Inspector. And they'll describe there, as you see here, that their role is to represent home buyers by verifying if the system meets the minimum standards, help resolve citizen complaints to NRPP. So there could also be an opportunity for you to go out and if NRPP is doing investigating a complaint with somebody who's not willing to go back out and work with their client, which does happen, then you could perhaps help with that and get paid for it. And then assist state radon programs with compliance enforcement. State of Indiana is a state, and there are some others looking at it, that are actually paying compliance inspectors to do inspections as part of their state radon program. Prerequisites, I won't spend a lot of time on that here, but you can see that you really, if you are certified as a measurement professional, then that's the most important prerequisite. And then you're going to take an 8-hour course. It's an affordable course through a number of different providers. And then you do have to take an exam. And like anything else, there's some continuing education that you'll need to take care of every 2 years. It's a 2-year certification. So I invite you to check that out. Okay, and then finally, I would suggest to you to provide the highest quality tests that you can. And this is a little bit of a sales pitch, but it's also something that I want you to just be familiar with, just for your own benefit when you're out looking at radon monitors. And perhaps some of you are new folks and you're looking at which equipment to get, or maybe you've been at this for quite a while and you need to buy some more equipment because your business is growing, or some of it's gotten old. The sensitivity, or what I prefer to call counting efficiency, on the Radon Pro that EcoSense sells is 30 counts per hour per picocurie per liter. And you may not, or you may be real familiar with what that means. But if you look at other units out there that are commonly used in real estate testing by professionals like yourselves, they don't have near this counting efficiency. And what that means is, if you gather all the random counts that would occur at a given radon concentration, throughout the course of a 2 or 3 day test, because it is random radiation counting. After 2 or 3 days, then those lower efficiency detectors will give you a pretty good number. They could be better if they had a greater detector efficiency, but the real benefit of a continuous monitor is that you get hourly readings that can help you look at trends and what occurred during the environment while the test was going on. So I'll give you a little description here, and you don't need to worry about the math. I'll be glad to share this with you, but basically what they do is, what's the counting error? And in this, I'm talking about for 1 hour, not for 48 hours, 1 hour. So how valuable are the 1 hour readings? So if the radon reading with a Radon-i Pro or even our homeowner units is 4 picocuries per liter, then a 2 sigma error, which means there's a 95% confidence level, is that the reading falls between 3.3 and 4.7. So for such a short time window, that's pretty close. I mean, yeah, there's an error in every measure, but between 3.3 and 4.7, if it's reading 4, could be a little less, could be a little more, but that's pretty close. By comparison, if you look at, say, a 1028, which gives you 2.7 counts per hour per picocurie per liter, then a 4 picocurie per liter reading for the hour, again, let me stress, for the hour, could be as low as 1.4 or as high as 6.6 because of the error involved, because you're getting so many less counts per hour per picocurie per liter. So this 10.8 is based at 4 picocurie per liter concentration. That's all the counts you're typically going to get on average with that detector. So you can see the error bar is much greater. If you look at another real popular unit that's out there, it gets a little higher. It's at 3.7 counts per hour per picocurie per liter. So it gets 1 more count per hour for every picocurie per liter. But you can still see that there's that 1 hour number is plus or minus 54%. So it could be as low as 1.8 or as high as 6.2. So the value of having that higher detector efficiency really shows up when you're looking at the data you're providing. And the whole reason you want to provide a test result with a continuous monitor is to give your clients good data. So I'm going to close out, and then I'm going to take some questions, because I see we've got quite a few in the chat, and I don't want to keep you running any longer than we really need to, because I very much appreciate your time. If you go to this particular, well, I guess it won't let me go there. All right, there's a ecosense.io/pages/InterNACHI. If you go there, you're going to go to a site that we created especially for InterNACHI, and you can get discounts off our products because you're an InterNACHI member. The other thing I want to share with you is, if you use this code right here, Dallas95, if you go to our site, then you'll get, for the next 48 hours, you'll get $95 off our Radon-i Pro. Our Radon-i Pro is $795 regularly, so that's going to bring it down to $700. And you can see one of the things that our Radon-i Pro does is it will enable you to prepare easily an AARST compliant or a report that's compliant with the ANSI standards. So we've got an app that you'd communicate with the device when you're in the field. We've got a dashboard that helps you manage your devices and your technicians, your admin staff, or whomever can do that. From there, you can set up templates for the reports and customize them for specific technicians that you have as part of your business. So there's a lot of useful functions between the admin app and the smartphone app. So I encourage you to take a look at that on our website. And if you want to get a deal on those, there they are. So I'm going to come over here to, I've got some in chat and I've got some in questions and answers. So one question that came up is, does radon give lung cancer to non-smokers? Yes. When I say that radon is the #1 cause of lung cancer in people who never smoked, that is a true statement, and they have the data to back it up. And what we're seeing now that kind of got lost in the data for a long time is, so many people smoked cigarettes for so long that it was kind of hard to single out, those folks who never smoked. And they were certainly outnumbered. But now that fewer people are smoking cigarettes, we're seeing a lot of people who have developed lung cancer who never smoked cigarettes. And the data, epidemiology data that's been collected for quite a long time, and not just from the United States, but from all over the world, it's been pulled together, studied and studied and studied. Shows indeed that radon does cause lung cancer in non-smokers. So to be clear, it's like smoking. There are people who puff on cigarettes. Maybe do a pack and a half a day live to be 90 years old, and something else killed them. And you say, well, it didn't hurt them, but then there are a whole lot of people who, that was the cause of their death. So let me get to another one here. Chat. Move up here to the top, bear with me. So let's see. I got one from Russell. He just mentioned, and to I don't know, to AJ, but just came across this webinar today, and his webinar on the 17th would be a good complimentary webinar to this one. Any way or appropriate, or is it appropriate to plug that webinar at the end of this one? I don't think that's a problem. AJ will take care of that. Good thing about InterNACHI is they're always working real hard to make sure that you guys get as much helpful information as possible. Here's one from Daniel, who says, over the summer, I encapsulated my crawl space and my Radon I Pro indicates 14 to 20 picocuries per liter. That can happen. The reason is sealing the soil to the area above that encapsulation is impossible. You can do what visually looks like, okay, I did a great job, and I would rather imagine that you or whoever did it did a great job. But the reason caulking and sealing doesn't get recommended as a mitigation approach is because it's been proven for decades that it just doesn't do the job. And the reason is what's causing radon to come in is the pressure difference between below that encapsulation and in this case, and the space above it. So there are places somewhere where that pressure difference, air will always go from a higher pressure to a lower pressure, and there's some place where that radon is being sucked into the house, and it's being drawn in, and perhaps that encapsulation has changed that pressure relationship and made it even stronger. So what really needs to happen, and one of the things we're trying to do a better job in overall in educating those encapsulation contractors, is that do some radon investigation beforehand. But it's real easy to plan, at least, for drawing air from under, depressurizing from underneath that encapsulation to take care of the radon. I'll give my information out if you'd like to talk about that some more, but that's what's going on. Let's see, got another one for Russell. Had a client say no to a radon test when taking the order. However, I always have a device ready to deploy, as many have changed their view at date and time of the inspection. Yes. Thank you, Russell. That's something I should have mentioned is be ready. You know, you want to be careful that even if you place a device like our Eco Tracker or we've got a new very affordable homeowner device that's called an Eco Blue. If you just place it out while you're doing the inspection, it's going to indicate that they've got radon because the response function is good enough at 30 counts per hour per picocurie per liter that you're going to get some data in that short time. Again, it's not averaging over a long window, but at least it may indicate to the client that, wow, I should test. Or as you probably are doing, Russell, you're able to talk to them a little bit while you're there. And once they've thought about it a little more and listened to you, then you have that opportunity. So you don't want to be caught and say, oh, I didn't bring a radon monitor to do the test. So I'll always be prepared that you can do the test. I've known inspectors over the years who would play a video. There are a couple of them out there of lung cancer victims who never smoked, who are very compelling. While they're walking around, maybe, hey, I'm going to start down, in the basement and look at this. If you want to stay here and, watch this, if the client is actually there, watch this video for a couple minutes and maybe helpful, or maybe you have another video or of just, talking about the health risks. But there are ways you can convince them, to test. Again, it's a matter of the information. That's why I like that radon warning statement in the inspection agreement. It makes them stop and think, and so you want to get them to do that and sign off at some point. No, I don't want it. And before they put that initial, they kind of go, well, maybe it is important because I'm having to sign off that I don't want it. Okay, another one here. In addition to online yes or no radon agreements, if the client is present, my inspectors and I ask or confirm radon testing is no directly and answer any radon questions. Yeah, I think that's kind of on the same vein. Yeah, it's a dialogue sometimes, and if you're able to get in front of them, if you can train your staff to do that while they're ordering, and they can get the person long enough to have that conversation, fine. I know sometimes the real estate agents do the ordering. Hopefully those days are, we've come to a time where that's less than it used to be, where the agents wanted to control everything. And but perhaps your staff can also give them a little information or send them a link to something where they can make that decision. But there's nothing like face-to-face conversation. Let's see. Okay. Let's see. Something about if you are NRPP certified, reach out to local realtor groups. Okay, so Russell, I think, is doing is it Russell who's doing the next webinar? I think so. Yeah, realtor groups are also an important target, particularly if you're in an area where radon testing isn't as common as in others, and you're trying to work there. Remember, there was a time when radon testing wasn't common anywhere. So yeah, educating the agents where they're not fearful. My gosh, this has been going on for since the late 80s, early 90s. Radon testing doesn't kill deals. It's easily fixed. The homes can be mitigated within the time constraints of the transaction, and people just move on. It's like anything else you find. It's all solvable, and no reason for the agents to fear it. Yes. Oh, another point, when you're out doing realtor presentations, if you can kind of document that and what you are, what you're teaching to or information you're giving to the agents, If you're NRPP certified, they do have what they call a category 2, which I'll be glad to give you something that you can submit for category 2, even for attending this webinar for the hour. If you're spending your time teaching a radon class to real estate agents, for example, then that category 2 doesn't require an exam, a quiz as part of the course, like a category 1 does. And there's a certain number of credit hours that can be that category 2. So talking to real estate agents in a formal presentation for an hour, you can document that and send it in to NRPP to get an hour CE for that presentation. Okay. I just had a question here. Does EcoSense offer a rental program? It's funny you should bring that up. We are in the midst of conversations about that right now. It actually came up because one of our conversations here recently with a large company that we were selling our services to said, well, they're actually leasing units from one of our competitors and wanted to know if we could work out something like that. Yes, we can. I don't have it put together yet, but if you will email me, and I'll give you my email address here in just a second, then I'll stay in touch with you. And as we get that put together here this year at some point, then I'll be sure to let you know. Let's see, QA, got some more over here in QA. Sean, how many short-term and long-term radon testers would you recommend a home inspector have in stock? If you're just starting out, well, I think if you're just starting out, it would kind of depend. Sean, if you'll text me in kind of what state you're in, that would also help. I would say you need at least a couple of radon eye pros or short, to do short-term tests with, because if you've got one out testing for 2 days, then you're out of business as far as doing radon tests. So a couple, I think, would be the minimum you'd want to have, even if you're not doing a lot of testing to begin with. You're in a business, and that's an investment, and your objective would obviously be, as to keep them busy. So I would say that as far as those long-term devices, I talk to a lot of inspectors these days that keep a few to have there where they can sell them to their clients and make something, because again, it's face-to-face, you get it in front of them. So you can order some from us that way. The other thing is, if you're on our referral club, then basically you can show them one and say, look, if you want to go here and order on my, from my page, we'll give you a landing page. If you're part of the referral club, order one of these home units, then you'll get a discount or the lowest price if we've got a special Amazon sale or something like that, but you'll get a commission on it. And you'll actually have a little dashboard that keeps track of where you can see the sales that have come through your code, whether it's from your website to your particular landing page, or whether you just gave somebody the code on a card or whatever, and they typed it into our website. You will get the credit on it, and we pay those out every month, typically via PayPal, or if you want it, go to your bank, we can take your routing number and do that too. So I would certainly invite you to, get out and sell them and be aggressive, but yet 2, I think, would be the very minimum. If you live in, let's see, did I see a state come in? If you live in a state where radon testing is rather common, then, you may want to get a third one. If you're living in Arizona, then, I would say probably, until that market gets a little more mature, then maybe 2 is plenty. Let's see. Did I get it? Did I get all of those questions? Okay, I think I got everything. If you I'm going to clear these off here. Anybody else have any question before we sign off? I see we're at 5:56, so we're getting up toward the hour, and I promised I wasn't going to keep you guys longer than needed to get through the material and answer questions. All right, so I'm going to give you my email address, and it's pretty simple. You can see my name on the screen there. It's Dallas Jones, but my email address is just djones, D-J-O-N-E-S, at EcoSense. It's not .com, it's .io, ecosense.io, djones at ecosense.io. And I'll type it in here if you guys want to take a look. I'll even put my phone number. So I really want to thank you for your time. I want to thank AJ and InterNACHI for giving me the opportunity. I hope I get invited to come back and perhaps provide some information on some other related topics, things particularly with radon. That's been my business for most of my life. So if I can be of value to you in any way, then I hope you'll email me and I will get back to you. I appreciate the opportunity.